Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, one and all, representing the media in Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to this engagement for the benefit of the stakeholders, patrons, participants in Carnival 2024, which has in fact already started. So today, we have asked you to be here so that we can address, for your benefit, the matters as contemplated by law enforcement. In this particular case, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, solidly and ably supported by the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, and of course, the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service. And we are here together. I have with me here today, if I would begin on my right for these purposes, Assistant Commissioner of Police, Mr. Maraj, who is the second in command, the gold commander, the alternate gold commander, and as well ACP Thompson here on my left, the gold commander appointed by the police commissioner to manage and oversee the events in front of us. As well, we have acting DCP Sampson of the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service. And of course, we have the operations officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, Colonel Millington. These are the professionals, these are the experts who will be able to tell you all of the preparation for the activities as are already underway, and that which the people of Trinidad and Tobago can expect in the ensuing days, particularly Carnival days, and all to be terminated for our purposes on the night of the 17th of February of this year, obviously. Safety and security is obviously the highest priority for the government and for the Ministry of National Security more specifically. Some of you may recall that on January the 8th, we gathered in this very room where we engaged the National Carnival Commission, and that was the Minister of Tourism, Minister Randall Mitchell, and myself. We had the National Carnival Commission. We had the FET promoters represented here. We had other stakeholders, and we discussed as early as January the 8th issues around security for Carnival 2024. The main decision that came out of that was the regulation of some of the challenges we had before with the crowds that attend events like the FETs. And out of that, a memorandum of understanding was settled between the police service and the FET promoters, which has been put in place and which I understand information available to me is working quite well. So we would now see very much more managed events. When the promoter indicates to the court that they expect, say for an example, 6,000 people, there's a formula in place to measure the number of people going into the FET, and when it gets to that number, then of course the fire service will intervene and ensure that no risks come to those already inside and those who might want to come inside. If there are any issues outstanding from that, the MOU contemplates that the ticket holders will have to resolve that with the FET promoters. And altogether, issues about the number of fire officers and the number of police officers, all with a view of public safety. That was done on the 8th of January, and from all the reports available to me, it is working quite well. And I saw it at work at the safest FET in town, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, a few nights ago. I had the opportunity on invitation to be there and paid close attention to the fact that between the Defense Force and the police service, they ensure that the entire event and the environs were well secure. I understand from ACP Thompson and Colonel Millington that the security exerted at that location took into account the thousands of people on their departure from there. They traversed down Richmond Street, down Frederick Street, down Charlotte Street, and I am told and have records of that substantial amount of law enforcement presence along the route. The traffic flowed very smoothly. KFC was very orderly, patronized, and everything went well to the extent that there has been absolutely no report of any untoward incident flowing from that. So we saw the system almost immaculately, perfectly at work. And this is what we offer to the people of Trinidad and Tobago at this time. And looking forward to the next few days into Carnival. You will recall around that time, one major stakeholder, major investor in Trinidad and Tobago, BPTT, had withdrawn their limited sponsorship, working along with the NCC at the Queen's Park Savannah. And when issues reported by you in your very hard-working ways revealed and uncovered some of the fears that persons would have had, they decided that they would not participate in that way again. The government, recognizing that it was a very meaningful stakeholder, gave the assurance to BPTT that law enforcement will treat with the issue that troubled them and troubles most of the society. And BPTT came back on board with a greater sponsorship package than had been previously envisaged. And so far, in that exercise at the Savannah, from reports available to me, that too has been going with the support of law enforcement particularly well. I attended a graduation ceremony a couple days ago of, I think, 139 traffic wardens. We take a whole of government approach to dealing with crime and violence and even the management of this affair, so that I can tell you that in respect of the traffic around these events, we have more personnel, including, of course, the very proudly recently graduated traffic wardens. And as you will hear later and shortly from the Gold Commander and his second in command and the Colonel and the DCP here, Deputy Fire Chief, sorry, you will hear that all the elements of law enforcement, all the elements of the government, as far as can be applicable, has been brought to bear to make sure that we do what we have done for decades, execute a safe and happy carnival to the benefit of all of the participants, all of the investors in Carnival, all of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and our visitors from around the world. So at this point, I would want to give way to ACP Thompson, who will take you through some of the actual programs and plans that they have put in place, the police service along with the Defense Force and others, to ensure the safety that we assure you you will enjoy. I thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to members of the media, the listening public, and the nation at large. As the Minister would have said, our approach has been one of collaboration. While holding the position of Gold Commander, I must inform you that the Gold Command consists not just of Police Service and TTDF and Fire Services. The Gold Command represents a collective
of the National Security Network, government ministries, institutions, organizations, and corporate citizens, which impact not just on safety and security, but also on the nation's economic interests. Carnival bringing in at least 1.5 billion in one shot, culture and quality of life for our citizens. I must also emphasize that our collective actions and operations is not focused solely on Carnival events, because we recognize what Carnival represents to various people. It may be campers, it may be persons going to Tobago and other to the beach. So our network, the security net we have spread, covers all citizens and the entire country, regardless of what your level of activity is. This team comprises many, including, aside from TTPS, Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, it includes Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service, Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service, Customs, Immigration, Licensing, Transport Commissioner, Ministry of Works, T&Tech, NCC, tourism, local government, municipalities, promoters, residents, members of the clergy, EMA, OSHA, and it goes on and on. Our responsibility extends to our route management, in which case T&Tech comes in, raise the lines. Ministry of Works would attend to any dangerous holes in the road. This is the extent of collaboration. We would have engaged our diplomatic corps and briefed them and sensitized them as to our course of action, our most recent intelligence as far as safety and security for this carnival, contrary to what may have emerged to suggest otherwise. We are saying that Carnival for not just the TTPS, but for this grouping that oversees Carnival is a constant. It is not just this Carnival, it's not just the Carnival before, is more than a century of Carnival in which we would have branded how we manage this type of event to share with the world not just the ingenuity of our masqueraders and designers, but the capability of our security forces. So, to continue, we have consulted with the NCC for all events, pre- and post-Carnival. We would have consulted with promoters, band leaders. Our intention has been, as the Minister would have expressed with the Army FET, for all major events to provide that blanket that not just in the event, outside of the event, we create extra layers of security. We have utilized, employed, and deployed every asset available under the Ministry of National Security. We have been assisted by corporate citizens in providing that blanket to persons who would have left their homes unattended and will be leaving their homes unattended during this season. To the persons who would be going to camps, we have gotten that level of assistance that additional eyes and ears will be on the ground to assist law enforcement to respond. In that light, I want to take this opportunity to appeal to persons who will be going to camps, persons who will be leaving their homes vacant, to engage us. Engage us by registering at the district police station wherever you go to camp, informing your district police station where you reside of your absence, to ensure that you are so covered. I want to include that our presence in terms of coverage will utilize both air, land, and sea. We would have persons on foot, we'd have persons conducting marine patrols. We have the benefit of the Coast Guard working alongside the TTPS. We have the benefit of our other resources, inclusive of our mounted branch and canine, which has increased in strength to provide that extra level of detection. I wish to also add that we take note of the arrival during the carnival period of cruise ships. For that purpose, we have engaged the tourist TTL, Trinidad Tourism Limited. We have engaged the port, and we will be putting in that extra layer to ensure that those visitors, as is the norm during this tourist season, when we have a number of cruise ships, which Mr. Maraj typically administrates throughout Port of Spain, that the result will be the same. I would have been, a few days ago, I would have been on an airplane coming back to Trinidad, and I was heartened, Minister, that it was overbooked to the extent that the airline was offering persons, if you give up your seat. There were persons coming to this island, some singing coming onto the plane. This experience tells me that what we are doing is working. I would refer to the recently held Panorama event, which we successfully executed. I'd refer again to the fiesta at Skinner Park, successful execution. Many of the measures we have been taking and will be taking, I will not speak of directly for obvious reasons. But I can assure you and members of the public that the process is intense and ongoing, even as we speak. We will not be satisfied until the end of this overall exercise, when we will report back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gold Commander. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is indeed a pleasure to sit here and address members of the media and by extension the public on what we plan to achieve during this carnival period 2024. And as a law enforcement agency, together with our law enforcement partners, our aim is to sustain high visibility in and around carnival-related events. Additionally, non-carnival related events, residential areas, beaches, non-participating members of the citizenry, we intend to incorporate all our activity to provide that area, that arena of safety and security. We do this through courteous, tactful, and responsive service to the public. We intend to ensure public safety and to preserve public order, to minimize opportunities to commit crime and disruptive behavior, to minimize traffic congestion along the roadways and main thoroughfares, and to prosecute offenders who commit violations of the law. Now, having said all of that, I want to move directly to a burning issue and to put some perspective on it. To achieve these objectives requires a significant amount of human resource. And within recent times, we have heard from some quarters that there is the likelihood that police officers who have not received certain emoluments vis-a-vis back pay and so on may not be reporting for duty as some mark of protest, as the case may be. And I want to debunk that myth immediately. That is not the case. That's a misconstrued perception that has been perpetuated in the public domain. And those who know better should say better. The truth of the matter is that the state, or the representative body on behalf of the organization, the police service, in conjunction with the representatives of the state, the CPO, negotiated and agreed to certain terms and conditions and benefits. The government of the day has made the allocations. The money is there. But I would like us to consider, and I'm speaking to police officers outside there, and members of the public with the misconceived perception. The money is there, but it's a process that is required to ensure that all checks and balances are put in place. The Commissioner of Police has brought in all the resources humanly possible for the expeditious processing of these back pay issues. But it takes time. More than that, police officers generally, and I speak here on behalf of the majority, did not enlist in the institution on the premise that they will perform duty if they are given a back pay. They enlisted on the premise that it is their calling, their patriotic duty to respond to the needs of the state, particularly when it relates to national events such as Carnival. So I want to debunk that myth and let the public know that police officers have been called out, those who are on vacation leave, and in the jurisdiction, they have been called out to augment the existing strength available to perform duty, together with the special reserve officers, municipal police officers. We even went to the parliament officers, members of the defense force, traffic wardens, and built into our Carnival 2024 safety and security plan is a contingency plan that captures sufficient numbers of officers in the remote eventuality that there is some level of absenteeism. Our history as a law enforcement agency speaks for itself. It boasts a proud record of minimal criminality or activity related to Carnival. For this Carnival 2024, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has presided over no less than 68 events. Did I say 68? Yes, I said 68 events, all incident-free to date. We have put all the measures in place. You see, members of the media and the public ought to understand that Carnival itself, Monday and Tuesday, takes care of itself. There is sufficient resources to take care of Carnival. We place great emphasis on the post-Carnival activity and the pre-Carnival activity. And to mitigate against that, we have all our strategies in place. Now, persons must understand that it's a symbiotic relationship between the law enforcement to create that environment of safety and security, simultaneously with a responsible citizenry doing their part and providing that level of responsible behavior to ensure that the product called Trinidad and Tobago Carnival remains a safe and comfortable one for all. We have done all within our remit to provide all that we can and that we are called upon to provide. And rest assured this Carnival 2024 will in fact be a successful one. I thank you.
Good day to members of the media, to the listening public. I'm Colonel Colin Millington, Director of Operations for the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, and I'm here to further reassure you that the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force will provide effective support to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service during the surge efforts in the build-up to Carnival, during Carnival, and post-Carnival. The support will be across all divisions throughout Trinidad and Tobago, and the strategies employed will ensure that all Carnival and non-Carnival related events are properly supported by the Defense Force. There'll be a visible presence throughout Trinidad and Tobago, both on land and at sea, in support of the police service. There isn't very much more that I can say other than there will be effective support and proper coordination and collaboration in support of the heightened Carnival activities over the period to come. Thank you.
A pleasant afternoon to members of the media and to Trinidad and Tobago public listening. It is a pleasure, as you've heard before, to be part of this panel discussion as I represent here the interests of the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service as part of all of government, all of national security approach to ensuring a safe and secure Carnival 2024. The Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service, as you are aware, and for those who don't know, we are charged with the primary responsibility to ensure hazard identification, risk mitigation, and we have been so engaged in all aspects of the pre-Carnival preparations, meetings with NCC, meetings with the Gold Commander, meetings with the Operations Center to ensure that the fire service interests and what we are required to do effectively manage. I can say to you, Trinidad and Tobago, that the Chief Fire Officer, the Acting Chief Fire Officer would have met with all his divisional commanders, and we have had meetings even prior to that, since last year, since the launch of Carnival, to set the framework for our approach to ensuring a safe Carnival. Our fire prevention department takes lead in this regard as it relates to life safety coverage at all our events. You'd have heard the minister speak to the collaboration with the TTPS, and that has been working, and he says from his reports, and I can further add, it has been effectively managed and it's working well. What I have to say, though, is that the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service, we have additional concerns. Our additional concerns is because we not only are required to provide life safety coverage at venues throughout the nation, throughout all the Fed venues and the Savannah et al. What we are also responsible for is the after-event effects, and that speaks to motor vehicle accidents, that speaks to incidents that occur prior to getting to venues and after. I can say to you for the last 2 to 3 weeks, we have had no fewer than 23 motor vehicle accidents that we would have responded to in addition to motor vehicle fires. So we have an additional concern. Further to that, we are into the bushfire season. And we have been busy. We have had in excess close to 75 bushfires already, just in the Northern Division. Throughout all the divisions, well in excess, close to 300 bushfires already. Now, you may think that that places a burden on the resources of the fire service that will diminish our capabilities to provide the safety measures that we are required to. I want to place on record today that the strategies that the members of the executive, all the heads of section would have employed, inclusive of stopping the cessation of all leave, the development of strike teams. So there the normal response from the stations for every major event during the carnival, there would be strike teams positioned in close proximity, not within the venues, but within close proximity of events to minimize the extent of damage and risk to patrons that may occur. We have had some challenges, and challenges from the standpoint, we have not had errant promoters, but what we have had is members of the public who are testing the system to see whether what we have put in place, it is being effectively managed. All the officers that are out at all events are providing live safety coverage. They have been briefed. They are continuously briefed as to what is expected. All the divisional commanders are required to do preliminary visits to events to ensure safety. I myself would have traveled to Skinner Park to ensure that that venue was safe for the event, Calypso Fiesta, that I was reported at the culmination that it was incident-free from a fire safety, fire response initiative. So let me assure Trinidad and Tobago, the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service, as part of national security, we are prepared, we are ready. Our officers have been trained and briefed as to what is expected of them. We have encouraged a heightened measure of security, a heightened measure of alertness and vigilance as we discharge all our functions. We are ready. In spite of our bushfire season, in spite of all that is being asked of us as a fire service within the resources that we command at present, and we have been doing human service. We have been doing an excellent job in ensuring that Carnival 2024, as you have heard mentioned prior, will be a safe and a secure one. I thank you.
Members of the media, you have heard the leaders of the respective arms, divisions of national security, and of course, they are open to you for any questions that you may have in this regard. Thank you.
Testing for audio. Good afternoon, Minister. Good afternoon to members of the panel. Jesse Ramdale, CNC3 News. Either to yourself, Minister, or to ACP Mirage. You would have mentioned that there would be sustained high police visibility during Carnival and even after. There have been concerns, particularly as it pertains to gang violence, and are there any tailored approach to how that will be handled for the upcoming period, as well as there have been concerns raised over the use of police body cameras? Will that be used or part of the mechanism throughout the Carnival period?
Interesting question there as it relates to gang violence. The strategies that are being employed at this time will intensify in the period leading up to Carnival itself. I don't want to disclose too much about police strategy, but it is a concern. Priority offenders, those who are in the system, those who engage in that kind of gang warfare, that culture, we are addressing that. We have our eyes on that. All assets that are available to the police will be used, inclusive of body-worn cameras. Now, I'll level with members of the media and the public. The number of cameras available in relation to the number of police officers is at variance. But I will add that there is sufficient to provide the first or frontline officers with, and they have been instructed to wear these cameras switched on. There is a policy. The use of the camera is instructional. and we all appreciate the advantages of wearing this device. So rest assured, what we have in stock will be used, not only for Carnival, right now as we speak, for Carnival and beyond.
Mr. Maraj, you also alluded to the fact that in an effort to augment the police complement, that officers will also be called out, I guess, those who are on vacation, etc. What do you have an estimation in terms of figures, the total figures that you're hoping to be on the ground over the period?
Well, I wouldn't be able to speak to a specific figure, but I can tell you that the regulations require that not more than 15% of the active strength of the police service must be on leave at any one point in time. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
Jewel Brown, TV6 News. Question to who may want to answer at the head table. Reference was made to the issue of back pay for the police service and the process. I was just wondering, are there any particular challenges in terms of the process that could better be able to help persons understand where there are delays, why those delays are taking place?
Maraj will treat adequately with that. He wanted to get some sense of the status of affairs with the back pay. And I trust he thinks that it links
back
to
pay.
the security.
In terms of any challenges, if there are, persons may have a better understanding in terms of delays, why there are those delays with regard to the process of processing the back pay.
Well, I made reference to the issues before. It is a significant number of, applications to be processed in quick time by a small group that has been augmented by our brothers and sisters from the various law enforcement agencies. They have been working on weekends, public holidays, extended hours, above and beyond the call to process this significant number of applications. I can say that more than 99% of Special Reserve officers have been paid, and close to 55% of the regular police population has been paid, and the finance branch is working assiduously to ensure that the rest is processed in as quick a time as possible, so that the monies will be made available to public officers who deserve it anyway. It is theirs. So I don't know if that answers your question, sir.
Thank you very much for that. Something else I'm wondering about, maybe the representative of the Defense Force may be able to assist. There was the issue of wearing of camouflage. In terms of even, let's say, at the same Army Fete, there were some photos, persons wearing in terms of not the actual uniforms of the Defense Force, but things that may look similar. Is that something of concern going through the carnival season, and how is that being addressed?
The issue of camouflage and the public wearing camouflage is an age-old one. The regulations state that the public is not supposed to wear anything that looks similar or is direct representation of the Defense Force uniform, and the Defense Force, Customs, the police continue to enforce the law in relation to this.
Let me very quickly add that it is the Defense Act and a couple other elements of the law that treats with the matter. But just for the benefit of the record, Section 219 of the Defense Act, to which the Colonel made reference, it says, and I might quote, permit me, a person other than a member of the Defense Force who without lawful excuse, the proof whereof shall lie with him, the burden of proof is on him, A, wears the uniform or any portion of the uniforms of a member of the Defense Force, so it means it has to be their uniform, or B, wears any costume or article of clothing or apparel so closely resembling the uniform or any portion thereof of a member of the defense force. So let me intersperse here again. It has to be part of their clothing or apparel, means that if a handbag is in camouflage, that's not clothing or apparel. You follow? And it must so closely resemble, which means if it appears in pink or yellow and brown, you follow me? Doesn't closely resemble. I continue. As may cause such person to be mistaken for a member of the defense force. So that if she turns up in a real thin shorts in the camouflage color and a white or a pink top, that doesn't exactly resemble the uniform of the defense force. And therefore it is in this regard that the colonel says they will enforce the law. They make their own judgment and they take the time in from the facts in front of them before one decides, the police decide whether they would prosecute or not. And it continues, if such a person does those things, is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $1,000 or imprisonment for 18 months. Of course, mention is made of this kind of thing in the Summary Offences Act, Chapter 1102, and certainly in the Customs Act as well. There was a case recently in the court in 2021 touching and concerning this matter rather directly, the case of Isaiah Prince and the Attorney General, and where the claimant Isaiah Prince made certain claims and so on, and the court dealt in great detail with this. Suffice it to say that the court recognizes that the law which tells someone how they must dress is a restriction to some extent on their, to a large extent on their constitutional right. But the court understands that it is necessary sometimes to impose society itself on that right in the public interest. But it has laid out in the case, if one took time to read it, the very strict approaches that has to be taken. And the bottom line, as I understand it from following the judgment of the court, is that the thing has to, as I said, resemble. It has to be someone trying to pretend, or it might create confusion in the minds of a reasonable observer. But as I said, it excludes the question of pink camouflage print or yellow camouflage print, or the handbag, or the umbrella, and that kind of thing. And the court is well aware of it. It actually says in the judgment, the court is able, there's no complexity in the court understanding what camouflage means and how it ought to be applied in any particular case. Thank you very warmly.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you, sir, as well. Another question, has there been any sharing of intelligence with foreign intelligence agencies or authorities like the FBI, for example, with regard to issues of intelligence concerning this carnival season?
Well, you would have heard me say that we in national security take a whole of government, whole of society, whole of region, whole of world approach to dealing with this. Collaboration with our international partners is critical to this. You would have heard the Assistant Commissioner say that they took the time to brief the diplomats, the diplomatic corps in Trinidad, because they are the spokespersons for their countries here, and they are the purveyors of information about our country there. So they took time, and I commend the police for that, to sensitize them to the issues and what we are doing so that they would understand that Trinidad is a safe place, no less so than any other spot in the world, and that we have carried on Carnival here for decades, a century actually, and we have done that quite effectively and well. Insofar as our collaboration with them is concerned, you would have heard the Prime Minister a few days ago when he returned to Trinidad from his very successful and worthwhile trip to Washington, that in that collaboration, we have been promised the help of the United States government, and that includes all of their law enforcement agencies, of which the FBI is one. So the answer to your question, in short, is absolutely yes.
Minister, referring back to that same press conference with the Prime Minister, he would have alluded to certain criminals that were liking us, quote unquote, and that they were no small timers. And in relation to Carnival, and I'll keep it Carnival related at the moment, can you elaborate further on what those certain criminals may be? Have you guys, have the authorities identified them? And is there any particular attention being placed at this moment and particular resources being utilized to ensure that, you know, the threats that these certain criminals pose aren't realized in the next coming days going forward?
I seem to recall that you were at the press conference yourself. Yes. And he also alluded to the fact that he will be hosting a press conference tomorrow. The wait wouldn't be too painful, it wouldn't be long.
But as National Security Minister, you won't want to say anything further to that?
I think you would hear very effectively tomorrow from the head of the National Security Council. For today, we propose, as these professionals, as these experts, very experienced and qualified, they have come here, we have come here today to talk about Carnival and the security arrangements touching and concerning same. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good day, Minister Hines, Sean Douglas, Newsday. So we're hearing some fantastic stuff here that who can object, really. But what I want to do is just look back a little bit, because we had a terrible tragedy at San Fernando Hill. And when I'm thinking of even today we're hearing the number of agencies that have to exercise some oversight, if it's the OSH, the fire, the police, and so on. And I would like to see some sort of reckoning or some that this could not happen again. I mean, today is good, but has there been any investigation and conclusion as to the tragedy at San Fernando Hill? We hear that Manning Fet has since erected, for their occasion, since they've erected some fence, but there should be some sort of accounting or investigating on that. The second question I would have is that the tragic shooting of a young laborer erecting booths about 3 weeks ago, vendors' booths at the Savannah, if there's been any conclusion to that, whether it was some personal grouse in his personal life that found itself onto the job site, or whether it was an incident related to gangs trying to extort the contractors. So if anybody at the head table has any thoughts on those, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
For my part, that matter at San Fernando remains a very emotive and sensitive issue. I think common sense would tell us that investigations are ongoing, and I rather suspect that no conclusions have been arrived at as yet. And therefore, for those reasons, I think we can set that apart. Insofar as the other matter is concerned, I alluded to it when I made reference to BPTT's involvement a while ago, but I would certainly allow the Assistant Commissioner of Police, who would be far more steeped in these issues, to say his piece on that.
Yes, sir. So in relation to that incident in the vicinity of the grandstand, where the young man lost his life, investigations would have revealed, they are ongoing, but however, our investigation showed that this was maybe gang-related. However, it was not a case of extortion, it was opportunity. However, given the ongoing activity at the Savannah and other venues which provide seasonal employment for all levels of society, we have added extra layers and insulated those areas to prevent a reoccurrence. Credit to the NCC in terms of taking necessary action at the Savannah to increase the levels of security. But again, unfortunate, another life lost, but it was not extortion. It was not something to impact on our carnival. And I want to, we experienced on Mr. Sampson would be a witness for me on Panorama semi-finals night. There was a situation in the vicinity of Renegade Spaniard, and immediately viral it went, that they shooting Renegade Spaniard and danger by the Savannah. And when you actually get intel on the ground, no, it was not. It was remote, and you know the damage. So similarly, so we have to be mindful of that. I just want to share that.
Appears as though, oh, thank you very much, Mr. Nanton. Mr. Joel Brown.
Just wondering, anyone at the head table, in terms of the members of the protective services, maybe working longer hours, I think that would have been mentioned, and so on. In terms of managing issues of fatigue and so on and that kind of thing, so ensuring that persons are not overly stressed out or anything like that, how do you manage that at a time like this and then for the maybe days or weeks following Carnival?
Yes, I appreciate the consideration extended here in terms of health and wellness for our officers. What I can say, again, having spoken with my comrade at TTDF, yes, extended hours, the intention is, and typically at the end of this exercise, officers would be granted additional time off to cater for that recuperation. Also, we cater generally for, and again, yes, it's something we do year after year, but, and this is why I appreciate your question, sir. The Defense Force, Police Service, all our protective services, Carnival in the highlight now. However, after Carnival, we go into Easter, we go into something else, we go into something else. It's continuous. We never stop. But it is key that we provided that level of comfort for officers, extra time off as necessary to reward you for that extra work, as well as our EAP and other facilities for officers' health and wellness.
Specifically as it pertains to the Defense Force, to lighten the load in terms of looking at the soldiers, we would have also made this period a no-leave period. And of course, again, during the period, we'd work persons at particular times to ensure that it's not as taxing as it can be during a full call-out period.
Yeah, just to add some more content to that interesting question, and I want to say thanks for the question, because you are one of the few persons in society that acknowledges what the law enforcement servicemen and women do on a daily basis, and I say thank you for that. But I want to add something else there that we think that the public should be aware of, some of the do's and don'ts for the Carnival 2024. And you will appreciate, continuing from last year or perhaps the last 2 years, we introduced a ban on glass bottles. That is in effect for this Carnival 2024. And so I sat at another place yesterday addressing this issue, and I had some armchair keyboards looking for defenses as to why should they be prohibited from exercising their constitutional right to drink from a glass bottle. So I just want to reinforce the call, and for persons to understand the spirit, the intention, and to be mindful of the clear and present danger that a shattered glass bottle can cause to masqueraders, onlookers, the general citizenry, and not look for flimsy excuses to try to debunk something that is meant to improve the carnival product. Secondly, I want to speak about the route for carnival, banned routes. Routes in two phases, banned routes. A route has been established after consultation with the various stakeholders, supervised by the NCC, agreed among all, and the institutions of state have put together a response to adjust critical infrastructure simply to accommodate equipment like music trucks and whatnot, so that music trucks wouldn't have a person with a rod as part of the tool to move a line when they want to pass. I'm saying all of this to say, to remind the revelers, the masqueraders, the band leaders, that you have agreed on a particular route and to cease and desist from using other routes, because we have made all the adjustments to accommodate the smooth flow of you, your band, your equipment, and whatnot. And do not unnecessarily provide any kind of dangerous situation simply by trying to reach the savannah ahead of a rival band. So I just wanted to put that out there for members of the public. I also want to add, while we're on the issue of routes, emergency routes have been established to get to the main medical coverage point, which is the Port of Spain General Hospital. And a notification has been placed in the newspaper. And we advise persons to be cognizant of the do's and don'ts where you can and cannot pass and or park to impede the movement of emergency vehicles along these established routes. Bear that in mind, all in the interest of safety and security and maintaining that symbiotic relationship that I alluded to previously. Responsible behavior on the part of the citizenry, as well as a well-managed law enforcement approach to safety and security for all.
Just one question really quickly before I yield to my colleagues. In terms, one of the biggest concerns, not just for Carnival, but generally, but certainly going into this period, the issue of gun violence, the issue of the amount of illegal guns and firearms, ammunition, the amount of illegal firearms and ammunition that is out on the streets. Are there any particular strategies being used to deal with this specifically as it relates to all of the assurances that you've given for the security and safety of Carnival this year?
Yes, sir. Our operations, in as much as we are focusing on Carnival, and there's the challenge, our operations otherwise does not cease. It continues. You'd have noticed corporate communication would have released on Saturday just a picture of what is happening, which would have indicated, this was dated the 3rd of February, and give you insight into the previous 24 hours, where you had at least 10 firearms seized and 12 persons arrested within a 24-hour period. I would also speak to the presence on the roads, something that you would not see much in the media, etc., but I'm reporting here now. Traffic and Highway Patrol Branch. Countless exercises on the highways, and when you see the return of tickets issued, persons arrested, even ammunition and firearms, I am tempted to ask the minister if some of the returns from those tickets could come to the police service to assist us with resources. And it's a warning or sensitization, to use a better word, to the public, that even though it's not out there, it would not make headlines in terms of that presence and the extent of enforcement taking place on those highways. Be mindful, get a driver, utilize other forms if you are drunk or approaching that level. Utilize all means, because the breathalyzer is in effect, the speed gun is in effect, and every other means we have to bring those things to bear on the roads.
Yeah, good day. Well, I was told to ask one question, but I actually had two, so I'll ask two half questions, if you like. Any guidance to the public on noise pollution? And that is, can the police give any guidance as to persons who may be making noise and then persons who may be receiving noise unwittingly? Will the police just say, well, it's carnival, you know, give them 48 hours to enjoy themselves, or will complaints be taken seriously? That's half question number one. And second half question is provision of lifeguards for the non-carnival folk who want to go to the beach. Does Minister know if lifeguards, if the times and days and locations for lifeguards would be published, that the public could get that reassurance, the non-carnival public? Thank you.
In respect of the second half of your single question, is yes, and the lifeguards will as well be out there. We have indicated in the past, not too distant past, that we are even reviewing the arrangements around the lifeguards with a view, simple view, noble view of making the beaches more safe for all of the users, particularly at times like Carnival. So the answer to your question is absolutely yes. The other half of the question I would leave to Mr. Maraj.
Yeah, thank you, Minister. In response to your second half, in terms of noise and noise pollution, now it's a balancing act. And I would let you know that we have some meetings this week, later this week, to engage bar owners that operate in certain residential areas and whatnot, to appeal to these persons to exercise some kind of moderation when they conduct their business. Now, among the stakeholders consulted were various residents in certain neighborhoods, and I speak specifically to the Aripita Avenue. And yes, in that area, which is a focal point of carnival and carnival-related activity, some balancing act has to take place to manage, on the one hand, the culture and the events associated therewith, but on the other hand, showing respect for the residents and their right to peace, safety, security, and a noiseless night. So, yes, we are minded of the issues, and we are dealing with it.
Right. One gets the impression you have exhausted your questions, members of the media, in which case it falls to me to thank you on behalf of the government, and more specifically on behalf of the family of national security, whose business is to provide safety and security and comfort and a feel-good feeling as you celebrate Carnival 2024. We would like to thank you very, very much, and I take the opportunity to thank these leaders, these absolute professionals who would have interfaced with you today. Thank you all very much. God bless.